Hello. Thank you so much for joining us here today for the second entry of the From the Eye Down to the Soul film series, Herb and Dorothy 50 by 50. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Griffin Art Projects is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Stalo nations. We are honored and grateful to undertake our work here. My name is Emmett Hanley, and I am the Indigenous Curatorial and Marketing Assistant at Griffin Art Projects. First, just a few housekeeping notes before we jump right into today's presentation. Firstly, I would like to mention that if you would like to see live captions displayed for today's presentations, you can enable this by selecting the CC Live Transcription button today at the bottom of your screen. Lastly, I'll mention that we are using Zoom's webinar format today, which means we cannot see or hear you. But do feel free to get in touch with us using the chat dialog box at the bottom of your screen. There will also be a chance at the end of today's presentation for audience questions with the director of the film, Megumi Sasaki. So if at any point throughout the presentation you have a question for our presenters, do feel free to type it in the Q&A dialog box, which is actually separate from the chat. During the Q&A, you'll have the option to ask your question out loud. So if that is your preference, do feel free to indicate so in the Q&A dialog box, or feel free to raise a yellow virtual hand using the button at the bottom of this screen. Today's presentation is being recorded, so if you would like to ask your question out loud, your voice will be recorded on the audio recording. So without further ado, I will be passing the mic to Karen Tam, who is Griffin Art Project's adjunct curator and the curator of the From the Eye Straight Down to the Soul film series. All yours, Karen.
Thanks, Emmett. So hi, everybody. The Griffin Art Projects is delighted and honored to have director Megumi Sasaki join us today later for the screening of Herb and Dorothy 50 x 50, the follow-up or companion piece to Herb and Dorothy, which we watched together 2 weeks ago. 50 x 50, the second film is about giving back 50 works to 50 states. And as we will learn, each gift as a mini Vogel collection that comes out of Vogel's spirit of generosity has impacted each of the communities. The film captures the last chapter of the Vogels' extraordinary life and their gift to the nation, raising various questions on art and what it takes to support art in today's society. In 2008, legendary art collectors Herb and Dorothy Vogel made an announcement that stunned the art world. Known and loved as a retired postal worker, Herb, and librarian Dorothy, who built a world-class art collection on their humble salaries, the Vogel launched a national gift project with the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. that would constitute one of the largest gifts in the history of American art, to give a total of 2,500 artworks to museums in all 50 states. Having worked their whole lives as civil servants, their wish was to give back to the people of the United States. So I hope you enjoy. You're in for a treat today and for the film, but also that, again, as Emmett had said, feel free to type in any questions you may have during the screening of the film, and we will get to them with Megumi afterwards in the Q&A. So thank you.
Okay, for today's screening, we will be streaming over Zoom, but I am also posting a link to the Vimeo page and the password in the chat box. I'd recommend using this link to watch the film and then returning afterwards to the webinar for the discussion, as the quality of the video will be better over Vimeo, and it cuts down any potential technical issues we could encounter with the Zoom interface. However, as I said, we will be streaming the video today over Zoom as well for anyone who doesn't mind a lower quality picture and would prefer not to have to worry about navigating to other web pages. So the link and the password are in the chat now. So for those of you who will be using Vimeo to watch the film, we will see you soon. And for everyone else, I will begin streaming now. Enjoy the show.
I'm gonna just sit inside and holding my iPad like this. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem.
Well, thank you very, very much for joining us, Megumi. Karen, I'll let you begin with the introduction.
Sure. Well, thank you, Megumi, again for your joyful and moving films. And we are honored at the Griffin to have you with us today. You're joining
Thank you
us
so much.
today from Okinawa. Is that right?
Yes, I'm attending a business conference, and I'm sorry, this is getting a little bit unstable. I'm holding my iPad,
Oh,
but
no
yes,
problem.
I try to be stable as much as possible.
So I'm just going to give a quick introduction, a bio of you, and then we'll start with the Q&A after. So Megumi Sasaki began her career as a journalist for print media before joining NHK, Japan's sole public broadcaster in 1992. She worked both in front and behind the camera as anchor, reporter, and news director for a popular morning news program. In 2002, Megumi founded a production company, Fine Line Media, to streamline ongoing commitments to Japanese television, while facilitating her new interest in featured documentary projects. Herb and Dorothy is the first of these projects, a labor of love for which Megumi is both director and producer. The film went on to win top honors at many international film festivals and was released theatrically nationwide and as part of PBS's Independent Lens series. In 2013, Megumi completed what we just watched, the highly anticipated follow-up, focusing on the next and final chapter in the lives of Herb and Dorothy Vogel. A Whale of a Tale is her third feature length and had its world premiere at the Busan International Film Festival in South Korea, and has won awards in many other festivals worldwide. In August 2017, she published her first book with the same title of the film in Japanese, depicting behind the scenes of the film's production and the in-depth historical and religious background information of the whaling controversy, and which won the Science Journalist Award in 2018. So thank you again, Megumi. We are really appreciate having you with us today.
Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure.
So to begin, I guess maybe with Emmett, we'll both ask you questions, and also obviously our audience, if anyone has questions, just type it in the Q&A box and we'll ask the questions for you.
Exactly. I was about to say the exact same thing. So yes, please, we would love to hear from you at home in the audience. And I'll let you take it away, Karen.
Sure. So I guess the first question, just like a warm-up question, is how did this project, both films, come about? Why is the story of the Vogel singular, so unique, and why does it resonate with us?
Okay. So I was working for NHK's production, and I was in Washington, D.C. filming at the National Gallery. And then that was to feature Crystal and Giancarlo, the artist. And all the works exhibited there were a part of Herb and Dorothy Vogel collection. And somebody told me who they were, and I was like totally shocked and very moved. And I was so urged to tell their story. And I was just trying to figure out what's the best, way to do it. And since I was, always working on the TV documentaries, maybe that's the good idea. But there is a limitation to do that because you have to kind of fit in the programming. And I really wanted to sort of express, their greatness in not the limited way, and but it's just to remain just to leave, keep as a history. I think a documentary film is the best way to do it. I think their uniqueness is not about, they were able to collect art without really humble, income. But I think they really realized their passion and, really resonates the true love for art. And I think that's a love story. And I think, it's a love story for art and their friendship and also their love for each other. So that really let me think that what the what it takes to be happy.
Mm.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, it seems like, yes, this was a very, very personal series of films for you to make. What did you personally learn from Herb and Dorothy? What lessons did they teach you?
Well, first of all, I didn't know anything about art, and I learned a lot about art, but I think the most important thing I learned from them is that it's not the information or education that, you know, is required to appreciate art. It's it liberates us. You can just say, you know, I like it or don't like it. It's that simple. But we are sort of like so intimidated when it comes to contemporary art, especially minimum and conceptual art, the type of art that Herb and Dorothy collected. But it's the same, you know, the same. Is this beautiful? Does it touch my heart? And that's the only thing that you have to do, you know, when you encounter art and when you appreciate art. So that's what Herb and Dorothy taught me the most. And the one episode that when I was like making the film is that when I first did the interview, on-camera interview with Herb and Dorothy, they were not able to. So I asked the basic questions, you know. So why do you like this artist? It's a stupid question, but you know what? You know, what do you think the greatness of this work, this artist, or you know, what's the beauty of this work? And then they didn't give me any, you know, specific answer. They would just say, oh, I bought it because I like it. I like it because it's beautiful. That's the only thing that they said. And then I was like, oh my God, how can I make a documentary film about art collectors who don't really have a way to, you know, to express, they don't have a sophisticated language to talk about art. But that turns out to be a very important message of the film.
Do you still speak with Dorothy as frequently? Like how
Yeah,
is she?
sure. She really knows about where I am and what's, you know, my schedule, when I'm going back to New York and when I'm leaving for Japan, and that my mother doesn't even know. But yes, Dorothy, Dorothy and I are still very close. Yeah, Dorothy is my mom in New York.
Like even though we don't hear you in the films, like I think the warmth and friendship that you have with Herb and Dorothy really comes through. So
Thank
yeah. I guess another question was, did the 50/50 project, the film project, did that originate before or after you made the first documentary? Like, was there a sense of urgency for this film making the second feature due to Herb's health?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry to answer that question. I did not plan to make part two. It was really truly handful to finish that was my first film. So it was so difficult. So I never thought about, you know, making another film, especially about Herb and Dorothy. But after I finished the part one, and I felt like, yes, it was not about really art, as I mentioned, it's more about life. But I felt like, you know, sort of like I made a film about a famous artist behind the stage, but did not introduce or did not shoot what their play act on the stage kind of feel. So I felt like I need to do that to make a completion, of their life and art. Yeah. And also the first film was about collecting, and then the second part was about the distributing and giving. So that really completes their life story as well. So that's why I thought, it's important to make the part 2 and complete their story.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We have a question here in the chat panel. How did you choose which individual artists from the collection to interview and feature in the second documentary? Thank you, Lisa.
That's a great question. Let me think. I think I thought about the relationship between Herb and Dorothy. It's not about, first, yes, well-known artists. I picked up well-known artists first, and second, the artists closest to Herb and Dorothy. Yeah. Mm. That's mainly the reason, yes. And Mark Kostabi, in part 2, there's Mark Kostabi. A lot of people don't like him. And they're sort of like, oh, why did you pick Mark Kostabi? But I think it seemed to be very important for me to include him because he's very symbolic of 80s artist. He was very famous and very successful, but he was very commercial. And that really symbolizes a part of the art world, how the art world functions. And it shows very well how, art world is really forgetful. And then he was just, soon after he was forgotten by the art world, but for Herb and Dorothy, it doesn't matter whether he's, famous or not famous or successful or not successful or have a good reputation or not. It really doesn't matter for Herb and Dorothy. So that really tells a lot about what kind of collectors they are. So I thought that was important to include Mark Kostabi. I knew it was controversial a little bit, but yeah.
Well, thank you. One of the things I was wondering was how difficult was it to get in contact with some of these artists that were featured in the second film? Were they hard to get a hold of? And is it the same with the museums and galleries themselves?
Well, no, artists were very easy. I think that was the easiest part. And most artists are very friendly because as soon as I say Herb and Dorothy, they, I could see their smile. And they're like, yes, of course, they're in love with Herb and Dorothy. So it was not difficult at all, except one artist who is John Chamberlain. And, he's such a successful artist and very well known. So I really wanted to include him. So I interviewed him in the early part of the production. And he said yes. I mean, his assistant said he's saying yes. So come over. And then I went to his studio in Shelter Island. But he was so mean, and he's like, yeah, I remember them, the little ones, right? Like, he was talking like that. He was very provocative. And so I was like so shocked. I was kind of intimidated when he, talked like that. And then he never gave me anything. He was very, disrespectful to Herb and Dorothy. So I was like, so why, he doesn't seem to like them. And why he said yes? I was wondering. But so I ended up not using his interview. It was not useful. Yeah, I mean, it could be, but it just didn't fit in the story because it could make him look really bad. So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but thank you for sharing. Do you have any other questions, Karen?
Well, I guess following up when you said that was the easiest part of contacting and getting artists, museums to agree for interviews, what were some of the difficulties or challenges in making both films, and how did you navigate those surprises? Like, I'm thinking maybe perhaps like logistical challenges like securing copyrights for the works or scheduling film shoots or the financing of the films.
Yep, that's it, financing. Raising money, especially the first one. Yeah. Second one was not as difficult because first one was relatively successful and then everybody was everybody knew about Herman Dorothy and my film and myself. So they knew that I'm capable of making the film because, a lot of films are unfinished, end up not finished. But now I have a credit that I could finish a film and it could be an interesting film. So second film was not that difficult, but the first one was extremely difficult.
Mhm. And like, how has your work and experience as a TV journalist informed your approach to making films? Like, what initially attracted you to filmmaking and the genre of documentary?
I think, as a journalist, you have to be very fair and you have to keep the balance. But as a filmmaker, it's my work, so I can just express myself in any way I want to. I can say anything I want to. So there is not like limitation. So I really enjoy that freedom of expression.
Mm-mm. Like the two films, and I guess the third film too, like contribute to your own artistic journey.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Yes, it was. Actually, I think to me, filmmaking process is to find the answer why I wanted to make this film. So, for example, the Whale movie really changed the reason why I wanted to make a movie because the first reason was, because I wanted to respond to the Academy Award winning film, The Cove. How, the film, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie, but the film is to sort of like criticize in a really powerful way about the fishermen who still hunt the whales and dolphins, which they've been doing for 400 years in this little tiny, little village. And then these villagers and fishermen were really abused by a group of, the global, audience and activists because of the film. So I really wanted to respond to that movie. But as I make a, film, it turned out, there is a fault. It's not who's right or who's wrong. It's just we are different. We have a very different views towards the animals and nature's different relationships. So we are different. We don't like each other. We may not like each other, but we really have to coexist instead of like attacking each other. So I saw a seed of the war there, in this tiny little village. So that's what I wanted to express. So that changed a lot along the way. And then Herman Dorothy, not so much, but the first one, yes. First one was really trying to find the answer why I was like so moved, why I was so touched by their story. It was a journey to find the answer.
Mm-mm. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. We have a question in the Q&A box from Kirsty Lang. Did Dorothy complete her plan to live minimally with white walls in the original apartment? What was that transition and the result of that transition like for her? Thank you, Kirsty.
Well, that was her original plan, but she still got a lot of stuff in her apartment. I mean, she cleaned up a lot after her passed away, and I helped her doing that. But she also, so I think she has an attachment to a lot of things. Her attachment is more like books, towards books. So she's got tons of books, and I try to convince her that, you have a limited time, 24 hours a day, and there are like hundreds and hundreds of books. So do you want to be more selective? Which one do you want to read? Because, she probably ends up not reading majority of the books, but I think she enjoys being surrounded by books. So why not? So I just didn't want to interfere with that. But yes, artworks are all gone, as you see in the movie. And she just kept a few posters of their exhibitions, and that's about it. But she bought a huge couch, and she enjoys, life with a couch very much. Watching TV on the couch, lying down, on the couch. That's, I think, her pleasure. I guess.
Is she still active in going to see shows and visiting artist studios when she's
Not
not
much
reading?
anymore. Yeah, especially after pandemic.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately, yeah.
You mentioned in an interview that I read that the keyword for the first film for you was
Yep.
passion, and that the
Mhm.
second film was about sharing. And you captured the Vogel's love for art so beautifully, and the experience of looking at art, being with art, and their spirit of generosity. What is your feeling about Herbin Dorothy's impact on art history, especially the 50 times 50 donation and the impact of the collections on the local communities that they're in now?
Mhm. I think Herman Dorothy's important message is that art is for everybody, not just for the limited privileged few. So I think their contribution is to, let the world know that art is so democratic and accessible to every single one of us. I think that's the biggest contribution.
Mhm. I'm actually wondering too, like for the 50 times 50 museums, how often do they have to show the works from the Vogel's collections? And when they show it, does it have to be all together, or like?
I think yes, I think there's a rule that the recipient museum has to have the Vogel collection exhibition once, all the works that they were given. So that was a requirement.
Right. And have you continued your interest in contemporary art since the two films?
Well, not as passionately as I want to, because there's so much going on in the world. But definitely, it just, my appreciation for art really grew. And yes, thanks to thanks to those two films, I have, opportunity. I'm given an opportunity to film, to produce a documentary film on art by still like NHK. Last year I shot series for NHK's 8K channel with a huge crew and huge equipment at the Metropolitan Museum, the Best of Metropolitan Museum, kind of like a series, and I truly enjoyed that.
Wow.
Also, yeah.
Is that available for the rest of us who don't have NHK?
Unfortunately, yes, it's only in Japan. And yes, and you have to have a 8K channel, monitor and receiver to view it. So, yeah.
What are you working on, or can you tell us about what you're working on now?
Yes, right now I'm living in a tiny little village deep in the mountain in Japan, where it's a huge social problem in Japan, that decreasing aging society and also decreasing population. So the population is like about 1,000. And then I think more than 50%, the average, I don't have a number of the average, the age of the resident, but it's mostly elderly. There's an elementary school, a school that, holds the first grader till ninth grader. There's only 29 students altogether. There are more students and school staffs than the students, actually. So it's almost like a vanishing village, and there are many villages like that around around Japan. So I've been living there since last June and filming what's going on. And yes, so my next film is about that little village. It's a really beautiful place. It's like a Shangri-La, beautiful, deep in nature. So, but also there's a huge disparity between Tokyo, big cities, and those rural area in Japan in terms of the income and also digital literacy. They're like almost 50 years behind from that technology, but their life is very rich. Their lifestyles, I found it's very rich and fulfilling in that village. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of message in there. So
Wow. Thank you
That
for
sounds quite
sharing.
interesting. I was wondering how that might even relate to sort of the themes and things that are present in the both Herb and Dorothy movies.
Mhm.
Like, how would you
Yes.
say they connect?
Yes, I think it's about happiness. It's about wellness and what the life is about. What makes our life really fulfilling and happy. Is I don't believe it's yes. Only money can do to the certain point, but not really for everybody. I mean, for everybody, for everything. For example, like I'm attending this business conference, and I meet a lot of like VIPs and creators and politicians, and even like I was talking to the vice president of Google yesterday, and one of the vice presidents of Google yesterday, then she was like telling me, I live in the middle of this digital world, but I'm so tired. I really want to do the digital detox. And so she was like really eager to visit me in the village. So I think everybody's like, everybody who lives in the big cities, or especially if your lifestyle is depending on the digital or IT technology, I think a lot of people feeling a fatigue. Technology can make our life very convenient, but if you only pursue convenience, we have to give up a lot in life. So that's something that I realized after living in that in the place. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful, thank you. I think we've only got time for a couple more questions. So if anybody has any questions, please put them in the Q&A dialogue box or in the chat. Karen, do you have any more questions that you would like to ask?
I guess I was curious about what are some of your favorite documentaries from the past year, and or else what were some of the documentaries or documentarians who inspired you for your like when you first started?
When I first started, definitely Michael Moore. Yes, and then I never thought that I could be Michael Moore. I don't think I could ever be a filmmaker like Michael Moore, but I think he sort of made a path for documentary filmmakers, and he sort of proved that documentary film can be commercially successful, and then there are a lot of audiences. There's a certain way to approach, and there is a huge interest in documentaries. So that's what I think Michael Moore sort of proved that. So in that sense, his sense of humor, combining the humor and serious issues, is very clever, I thought. So he was very inspiring. But I'm more sort of like these days I'm more sort of like interest in visual beauty, visual expression in a documentary film. So I love the film. I haven't been really able to watch recent films a lot, but for example, rather than story, I think yes, a visual expression is I'm more interested these days. And The Reason to Jump is one of my most favorite of the recent films. That is a film about autism. And the film is really expresses how the autism people are looking at the world and listening, hearing the world, their perception, I mean, how they see the world. And the film really expressed it in a very beautiful way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. I have one more question of my own that I would like to ask.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite artwork or artist within the Vogel collection?
It's like okay, yes, I don't think it's okay, right? Herman Dorothy is always when people ask the question to Herman Dorothy, they're like, "Oh, it's almost like picking a favorite kids, and you don't do that, right?" So they never mention that. But yes, my favorite artist is Richard Tuttle,
Mm.
and then his work is so small, so simple, extremely simple, but expresses his expression is very big, you know. Um, yes, the venue is very small, like a tiny little wire, you know, or just a line, pencil line on a white wall kind of thing. But I think the world that she expresses is like really universal, very big. So I like that. Yeah, and very philosophical. It just make you really think and make you feel think a lot. So very challenging, but I like it.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, Karen, do you have anything else that you would like to add, or one last question from yourself?
No, I think I asked all the questions that I'm sure I'll have more after the Q&A is done, but I really
Okay.
appreciate your time and spending like half an hour with us for the Q&A.
I enjoyed it so much talking to you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate having you here, participating with us from so far away. And thank you for making these two wonderful films and allowing us to share them as well. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your invitation. I really enjoyed talking to you. And yes, thank you. Have a great day. Have a
Thank you.
great.
You as well. Okay, I just have a few housekeeping notes before we end the webinar today. If you liked this event and would like to see more like it, we are having one next Sunday, which is March 27th, and it will be a live from the studio with Osvaldo Castillo, who is one of our current artists in residence here at Griffin Art Projects. If you'd like to hear what he's been up to and what he's been working on during his residency, come visit us in another Zoom webinar next Sunday. Also, if you are interested in visiting our gallery and our current exhibition, Per Diem, the Gerd Metzdorf collection, we are open weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from noon until 5. And the gallery is free admission. We just ask that you sign up on our website beforehand, which is griffinartprojects.ca. So thank you all very, very much for coming. Thank you again, Megumi, and thank you, Karen, for organizing this as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Have a wonderful night, everybody, and we'll see you later.
Bye.